The cub's name was Veth, and he had not eaten in 2 days. He sat at the edge of the encampment's firelight, far enough from the warmth that the cold pressed against his fur like a slow hand. His littermates were asleep in the den. His mother was away on a hunt that had already taken 3 nights. His father had not returned from the last one. Veth was 8 seasons old, young by Vrathy standards, but old enough to know what the elders said about cubs who couldn't track, couldn't run the chase, couldn't bring down prey before their first growth shedding. Old enough to understand what the word burden meant when adults thought he wasn't listening. He heard a sound behind him and turned. The human was crouching at the tree-line, not moving, just watching him with those flat, forward-facing eyes that all the hunters said made humans dangerous. Veth had seen this one before. The station's maintenance worker, a lean, quiet man named De Jong who walked the perimeter paths each morning and said very little to anyone. Veth looked away. "Go back inside," he said. "I'm not good company." De Jong came closer anyway, slow and unhurried, and sat cross-legged on the frost-hard ground beside him. He didn't speak immediately. He pulled a ration pouch from his jacket, opened it, and held half out toward the cub without looking at him. Veth hesitated. Then he took it. They sat like that for a while, cub and human, eating in silence under a sky that offered very little light. "You were watching the hunt return," De Jong said finally. It wasn't a question. "They came back with 3 carcasses," Veth said. "All the cubs my age helped drive the prey. I fell. I twisted my foreleg 3 weeks ago, and it still won't carry a sprint." He paused. "My uncle said maybe the ancestors chose poorly when they gave me my body." De Jong was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" "I think he might be right." The human turned to look at him then. Not with pity. Veth would have left if it had been pity. It was something more careful than that. The look of someone taking stock of a problem they considered worth solving. "Can I ask you something?" De Jong said. Veth shrugged his shoulder ridge. "When the hunters brought the carcasses in tonight, who was the first to check the condition of the meat? Who noticed that the third one had a bone fracture near the haunch, meaning that section would spoil faster?" Veth blinked. "I did. I called it out." Elder Mara confirmed it. "And last week, when the juvenile Vrail wandered too close to the northern wire, who mapped out which direction it would most likely turn based on where it had been grazing the 2 days before?" "I drew it in the dirt," Veth said slowly. "But I was just watching because I can't run the..." "Who repacked the supply cache when the others stored it wrong and half the dried stock would have molded before the cold season ended?" Veth said nothing. De Jong leaned forward slightly. "I have been on this station for 7 months. I watch things. It is, unfortunately, my primary skill. A faint edge of humor in that. You watch things too, Veth. You have been watching everything this encampment does since before your leg healed. You remember patterns. You predict movement. You understand decay rates and terrain angles." And he stopped. "You think none of that counts because you can't run fast." "My people hunt," Veth said, and his voice came out harder than he intended. "That is what we are. A Vrathy who cannot hunt is. A Vrathy who cannot hunt the way hunting has always been done," De Jong said. Not unkindly, but firmly. "That is a different sentence." Veth turned away. His ears flattened. De Jong didn't push. He sat back and looked up at the sky. "I'm going to tell you something about humans," he said after a while. "We are not fast. We are not strong. We don't have natural armor or venom or thermal sensing or any of the things that make species successful on worlds like this. What we have is," he tapped the side of his head, "pattern recognition, memory, the ability to watch something fail and redesign it. That's not the same. It got us off our planet," De Jong said simply. "It got us to yours." The fire crackled. Somewhere deep in the forest, something large moved through underbrush and was gone. "I want to show you something," the human said. He stood and gestured for the cub to follow him. Veth considered refusing. Then he got up. De Jong led him to the equipment shed, the low building at the edge of camp where the maintenance tools were stored. He lit the interior lamp and pointed to a long table covered in maps, diagrams, and small carved models of the valley terrain that Veth had never seen before. "I made these," De Jong said. "Every patrol route, every prey migration pattern I've recorded in 7 months, every seasonal shift in water sources, every spot where the ground is unstable enough to funnel prey movement." He looked at Veth. "I made these because no one told me to. I made them because I noticed things, and I didn't want to forget what I noticed." Veth stared at the table for a long time. The valley was there in miniature, places he recognized, paths he had walked, angles he had traced in his own mind without ever putting them down anywhere. He could see 3 errors in the southern migration corridor immediately. The real prey line ran 10 degrees further east based on where the water pooled after rain. He said so. Dae-Young looked at him steadily. Show me. Veth's paw moved before he decided to move it. He adjusted the carved marker, corrected the line, pointed to where the undergrowth compressed differently on the eastern slope. A detail you wouldn't catch unless you had been looking at the same hillside for weeks and noticed when it changed. If the hunters approach from the ridge here, Veth said, instead of the standard southern approach, they cut the prey's escape window by more than half. The terrain does most of the work. Dae-Young said nothing. He simply watched. Veth kept going. He wasn't sure when he stopped being careful about it. At some point the words just came, and his claws traced routes, and his mind pulled up 3 weeks of observation and laid them down on the table like pieces of a picture that had always been complete, just never assembled. When he finally stopped, the lamp had burned lower. Your hunters lost 2 chases this month, Veth said quietly. I know where they went wrong. I've known for a while. I didn't say anything because I thought, he stopped. I thought it wasn't my place. I thought I had to be able to run the chase to have any right to speak about it. Dae-Young crouched, so he was eye level with the cub. That, he said, is the thing I want you to unlearn. Veth looked at him. Your people have a way of hunting that has worked for generations, Dae-Young said. I respect it. But a hunt is not only the sprint and the kill. A hunt is everything that happens before the sprint. Every decision about where to go, when to move, how to read the land. He held the cub's gaze. You have been doing the most important part of the hunt this entire time. You just weren't standing close enough to the fire for anyone to see it. The cub was quiet for a long time. Outside, the encampment had gone to sleep. The fire had burned to coals. The cold was deep and complete around the small lit shed where a human maintenance worker and a vrothy cub who couldn't run stood over a map of a valley neither of them owned. If I brought this to Elder Mara, Veth said slowly. The corrected migration map. The ridge approach. She would listen, Dae-Young said. I think you already know that. You've been watching her too. Veth looked down at the table. His paw rested near the eastern slope marker he had corrected, the adjustment so small and so certain. What am I then, he asked. If I am not a hunter? Dae-Young considered this carefully, the way he seemed to consider most things, as though the wrong answer would cost something real. I think, he said at last, that you are the reason the hunt succeeds. You just haven't been counted yet. Veth did not reply, but he did not leave the shed for another 2 hours. And when he finally rolled up the corrected map to bring to Elder Mara in the morning, he carried it the way his father used to carry a good blade, with both hands, with weight, with the quiet understanding that the thing he held was something that could change the outcome of things. He didn't know what his people would call it. Dae-Young had a word for it, from his own language. Strategist. It fit.